Hi, listeners. This is a new episode with as a continuation with the conversation with Justin Wenck. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you for joining us.
Check it out. I did want to say something to Nicole, your experience of seeing, the other digital nomads. And like, I think that's one of the great things about travel is like, we get to see other things that are possible.
Mhm.
Like, I think like one of my earliest international trips was like going to Japan. And that was, I think the first place I went where they have the stoplights where all the cars have to stop. And then they just have where just all the pedestrians can have a free for all,
Mhm.
like go and go kitty corner or across, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's possible, which is a little thing, but like seeing somebody, it's like, wait, you can actually work remotely anywhere in the world. And um that was like one of the gifts of the pandemic for me, was realizing, oh wait, I don't have to just be going into the office doing 9 to 5. I can do other stuff. I can actually be doing, have a tech job, and I could be doing my coaching mentoring business as well, and I can take it on the road. And I feel like we get the life that we tolerate. Like, sometimes we like to think like, oh, I'm getting the life I want. And it's like, there's a little bit like we stretch out. This again kind of goes to the identity, but it's like we really get the life that we tolerate. And so it's like, if we tolerate that, like, oh, I'm going to be stuck in a 9 to 5, like in a cubicle thing. Cause it's like, I would see this with my tech coworkers where it's like, it's like one of my coworkers is telling me like, oh, I'd really rather like, go be living in San Diego or living in San Francisco instead of being stuck out, in more central California away from the coast and things like that. And I'm like, well, just say that you're going to do that. Like, you're very talented. Like, you can easily get a job anywhere else. So the worst is you get a job somewhere else. And they're just like, no, I'm going to wait for a better time. It doesn't seem like a good time to ask for that. And meanwhile, I'm just like, I'm going to go work from Tulum for a week because I want to, and I'm not actually going to ask for permission. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, and I also relate to you as well, because I realized that before I went to go live abroad as an English teacher. Like, I told a lot of people, and people thought I was crazy. They're like, why would you leave everything in the USA, your friends, your family, your work? I said, because I wasn't happy. I needed to just like go out there and like really explore the world and see like, what I like best. And I realized how addicting the expat lifestyle is. Because I went from Thailand, Korea, Mexico, and the rest of Spain. And I didn't stop. I just kept going and going and going. So like now I have this ability here, but I'll go back to Madrid in June because my friend's getting married. But yeah, definitely.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, it is interesting how we can kind of turn just about anything into a drug, an addiction, or a distraction. And so just an awareness of that. But I'm always a fan of at least, getting out of one addiction, at least getting into something else. Because I think once we get going, it's hard to go back to however we were.
It's
We
so
eventually
difficult.
settle at a higher state of being, whatever that ends up being for us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And I also wanted to say as well, so in terms of like your business and whatnot, how long did it take for you to like launch your coaching business?
So I'm trying to remember. I launched I created an actual like business entity. I think it was like right at the beginning of 2020. Could have been the end of 2019 when I started. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna actually like make it go. Like, I was kind of doing coaching, within the company I was working for, sort of unofficially. Um and that was then there's well and then it's in hindsight, I would made attempts to coach people without them wanting to, just because it's like I was like, if they would be better, then my life would be easier. And so this was like not the nicest way to coach people. And so I've since learned that I people need to opt in. And most people in relationships like don't like to be fixed. It's just like, just listen to me, just listen to me.
Mhm.
And so that was in 20, and it's still growing. It's still a learning thing. I think like um, I still feel like I'm building up. It's probably one of those things. Maybe in a couple of years, I'll be an overnight success. But it will have taken like 5 years. But it's a slow build, because it's like I'm the product in a lot of ways. It's like,
Mhm.
yes, there's a lot of tools, techniques, and things like that, but it's really like, how can I be the person that is an example of that, shares that energy, and then is able to present that in a way, but also get the message to someone in a way that they go like, oh, this is for me. Again, like, how do I come to somebody where they're at and get them to like start this journey, which is you know, like any travel journey, it's got some pains in the ass, and it's like, but it's, you got to like realize it's worth it. I mean, still there's times like when I've you know, it's like just we're doing this boarding for the airplane, like again, like this 30-minute process to just get 180 humans into a metal tube. And there's a little bit of like, it's not the most fun part of the journey, but then like you end up somewhere like, you know, Chiang Mai, Thailand, and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I like went through that, you know,
Yes,
however
right.
many hour pain in the ass. And any growth journey, I feel like kind of has those aspects. And so it's how to get to somebody and go like, hey, this is going to be worth your while.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
no,
it's a
I
lot of trial
definitely.
and error and and feedback and yeah, just learning and adapting. Like, I don't know, there's a sort of an old coaching saying that's like, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Mhm.
So it's like how I build my coaching business is how I do my relationships, how I do my friendships, how I do like other stuff. And so it's like try something out and learn from it. And then again, like Mickey was saying, don't let the naysayers stop me, because I've definitely had some naysayer, you know, family is sometimes the most challenging. I don't know, what was your guys' experience
Oh
like
yeah.
trying to travel or do something different?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
I come from a very traditional family, like Eastern European family. They want me to like stay here. And I was like, I don't want to stay here. So again, like I like the fact that you brought up um, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, because even though the fact that like he had so many naysayers, he still went on to do what he wanted. And like he listened to his inner voice, he listened to himself, and he's like, well, at the end of the day, I have myself. If you think about it, it's like you have yourself and you need to do what's best for yourself, because even though you have your family members, you gotta do what's best for yourself. It's literally you, you know. So that's the most important thing too as well. You have to make sure you feel happy in terms of like your environment, like where you are as a person, because that's how I feel it is. But yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we're the ones that are accountable to ourselves for how we enjoyed our life whenever we get to the end of it, right? Yeah, like I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say like that, you know, when they're close to dying, like, oh, I wish I would have made my parents more proud or something like that. I think sometimes they'll be like, I wish my dad or my mom would have loved me more.
Right.
But I view that as just like they never got around to the perspective that the love that we're looking from our mom or our dad is something that ultimately we figure out how to provide for ourselves.
That's right. With
Not
from
every, yeah.
friends or like, you know, person you're dating or whatever. But yeah, absolutely, it's true. I wanted to ask you, how do you find your clients typically?
Um, so a good amount is like through word of mouth, I would say, of like, or just people that have been following me for a good amount of time. Um, yeah, but it's like I have lots of avenues. Like one thing that I've been doing for like the past couple months is like basically like every Wednesday I have an offering where someone can get sort of some free learnings from me. So like a little bit of like how to live an ideal life in a more effective, faster way. And another thing where it's like I do a little like one-on-one hot seat coaching. So I have like these opportunities, and then that's how people can kind of like go like, because I want it to be a good fit, not just for them, but for me, because it's sort of like you know, mentoring, coaching, it's a very intimate thing. And so it's like you want to feel like, okay, I can tell this person like my deepest, darkest challenges, fears, things like that.
Mhm.
So then we can work with them and improve how it is. Because it's, I don't know, and it's interesting how much people keep private, even from their spouse or whatever. And you know, that's great for me to be able that person where it's like, you know, almost like a therapist. You know, it's like, but I'm not a therapist. I'm not the rapist. People don't have to worry. I'm
Mhm.
not here to like do anything to you or take anything. Um, but
Um,
yeah.
I have a question. Did you ever did some kind of workshops? Because I went to a workshop from another coach, and
Mhm.
I like that because it was not only the one-to-one, it was also a group of people, and then it was more so guided that they could ask some question and was like a group of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love doing like small group coaching where it's like I'll take people through some material and then, you know, do Q&A or coach on like a topic that comes up. So I'd like to do those offerings every now and then. And in fact, like the one that I'll have coming up at the end of December, if people want to sign up, it's justinwenck.com/ideal-life. So that's like a small group coaching where I teach something that helps people sort of, learn how to have their ideal life faster and easier. And so that's like for a group of people, and then there's an opportunity to like ask questions, and it's so powerful like being with a group of people, because sort of like you get to benefit not just from however you learn something, but also from how somebody else learns something, or from somebody else's question. Because I know for myself, when I do group stuff, like somebody might ask a question that like I didn't even know I had that question. And so, or maybe I did, but I was afraid to ask, or I didn't know how to word it. And then somebody asked, and it's like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to know. So it's so powerful working like in groups. A lot of people sometimes are nervous and shy, but really we're all so similar that it's like 80% of problems we all have, we all share them. We think like, oh, nobody's ever had something like this happen to them from a family member. Like nobody's had issues with somebody that's been addicted. Nobody's ever had a partner that's treated them poorly. Nobody's ever had challenges with substances or eating too much or drinking too much. It's like we've all had those problems or been impacted by people. And I think that's also one of the things, is to realize that, oh wait, I'm not the only one. Like other people have these challenges too. So yeah, I do love to do group stuff because it's so powerful, and it's also a good way to just meet impacts a lot of people's lives, because one-to-one there's only so many hours in a day, right?
That's true too as well. You're right. Oh, that's actually really cool. Wow.
So I'd suggest,
I like
doesn't have to be with me, but to anybody, like try a group anything, like even if it's like a 12-step, like there's free things. Like a lot of people are like, oh, there's no help, and it's like there's so much help in the world, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
So I think that inspires some yourself if you hear it also from someone else. That's what you just said, right? And you mean, yeah, I like this. I mean, when I worked in this tech industry, I went to this kind of training of resilience, and so whatever, only to make you a better employee. But anyway, so, and also when I was younger, I read a lot of books about this kind of stuff. So I was always fascinated to learn more about myself.
Yeah, and it's just, there's so many ways that we can learn about ourselves, and it's just kind of like the right form at the right time. And it's amazing how kind of like the more indirect is usually the more effective. Like I know, Mickey, like you're big on story, and it's like story is like really like how we learn the best of just about anything, which is why if you look at any, and I think Nicole, you're like you said, you're a brand ambassador, and so I'm sure you know about the power of story and things like that. But it's like if you just say like, this thing has a 15% increase in that thing, and so you should do the thing. Most people are like, whatever. But it's like, if it's like, well, back in when Warren Buffett was a kid, he only started with $15, and then he put that $15 into this. When you can then sprinkle in all these numbers and all these facts with narrative and things like that, ends up being more powerful. Which is why I don't know if I've shared this publicly, but I've written another book that's a fictional piece that I'm working on getting like edited and published, but kind of for that purpose of like more people will read a fun, interesting, entertaining story, and then maybe they'll like get some benefit out of it, compared to like my book. It's called Engineered to Love: Going Beyond Success to Fulfillment. Like it's great, it's really well written, but it's sort of a standard, like here's my life story, and then here's some coaching exercises. And that works great for some people, but like not everybody wants to like read a biography or do coaching exercises. So yeah.
You're right.
But
That's actually really cool.
But you asked me that I so great on story, but you know where that actually comes from? I mean, and that has something to do with me, that I read the biography of Steve Jobs, and I also was involved with Simon Sinek, and I always start with why. Why you want to help someone? Why is your solution better than others? And that's the storytelling. I mean, and also it's always more powerful to say, if you really go in personal, listen, I went through the same thing, because that creates empathy, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I think it's like, oh wait, because I can relate that you were somewhere similar to me, and then you got to somewhere I want to go, which is way more powerful than the well, here's how you should do it. Like I'm sure if somebody had come to Nicole when she was living in Chicago and goes like, hey, you should be a digital nomad. You just got to do this and this and this. She would have been like, screw off. But then like seeing these people, it's like doing it, and then that they're like, wait, they weren't so different from me.
Yeah.
The why I do find interesting, because why is a very powerful word. It's almost like I don't know, like an assault weapon of words. It can be used to do some really great stuff for us, but can also be used to harm and keep us stuck. Because sometimes when like something bad happens, or like we're having a hard time, sometimes we're like, well, why like why is nobody like, you know, signing up for my class or downloading my podcast? And then our mind, there's like a saying, I think like in Buddhism, like the mind is the wish fulfilling jewel. So it's basically like whatever you put into your mind is going to like work on it and spit something out. And so if you ask, I think, I can't remember if it's Einstein or maybe it's a Tony Robbins quote, but it's like the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. So it's sort of like, so one of the things that I like to teach is called like identity installation questions, which is where it sort of like presupposes that you are like the person that has something you want. So like if you want to like write something really compelling, it's like, why am I such an amazing, compelling writer? And then like you just kind of like then go on to another thought. But like your subconscious is going to try to come up with reasons to support that. Like the why to do something. That's, I don't know, I think that's like a really interesting question, Mickey, of because sometimes we don't always have like the good motivations, right? And so I think there might be sometimes like the bullshit reason that is part of like the marketing story, that it's like, you know, because companies always tell us, like, you know, it's like, why does Amazon do it? So that we can have the best customer experience and, you know, help people and what, you know, that's the, but it's like at least in America, all of the companies, they're profit driven. Everything, period, end of story, is to make more money, maximize profits, period, end of story. Anytime it happens to benefit people, it's because some beautiful, amazing individual somehow managed to do like those backflips to connect to that thing that might actually help is going to make more money. Otherwise, it doesn't get done. And companies can actually, and there's actually a company in California that got convicted of murder. It's our PG&E, the big provider of electricity. Most of California got convicted of murder because they were so negligent in doing their maintenance that it caused that it was seen that it's like, oh, this was very likely to result in wildfires that killed like 86 people in one of like a few years ago, and they got convicted of murder. And somebody did the cost benefit analysis that like, oh, it's going to be more money. We'll make more money if we don't do the maintenance and risk killing people. Mm-hmm. And that's the current American corporate why. And so some people wonder, like, why are things so messed up? Like, that's it. Like other countries, I think they actually kind of do have different rules that like that can't be your only why. So but again, that's mostly in the US. I don't know.
But
yeah,
this is interesting. I mean, of course, this why came from Simon Sinek, who is American, right? And
yeah.
You're right. It's all this corporate teaching or coaching to make the employees better came from there. But this is again my identity that I came, I don't know how many years ago, to North America, lived in Canada, lived in the US, but I was born in Europe, so I have this roots too. And then I looked also in the other kind of philosophy, Buddhism, Hinduism, because I was interested in this. So now I got this all in me, and I find that's why I'm saying now I'm making this improvement, because I put it all together and I finally understand myself, why certain behavior of me, and I figured it out. And this is why I say the time in Madrid helped me, because it's happened at that time, at that location.
Yeah. And I think in some ways like a real genuine, because sometimes, you know, there's like practical wise of like, well, this is how I make money. If I don't make money, I'm not going to be able to survive, right? Or like, well, if I do this, then people look up to me and I'll get validation and people think that I'm somebody important. Whereas I think when we get to like a really fundamental like soul purpose, I think there's almost like no words. It's just like you just keep getting drawn to doing, to like just doing the thing over and over, no matter how ridiculous or how challenging or whatever. Because like I know like with the coaching mentoring, I've got like a really good friend from high school. You know, he's like a VP at like a software company, and he said to me, I was like, just why are you in this? Why do you do this? Like, this is like the most challenging thing you could possibly do. There's so many easier ways to make money. Like if you like bought like a gardening business, like, do you know how much money those things make, you know, in certain areas of the country? And he's like, you know, because it's like you not only have to be able to coach people, but you also have to do marketing. You have to like run a business. You have to, there's like, you have to do sales. There's so many things in a coaching business that are required to even be mediocre at it. And I'm just like, I'm just compelled. Just, this is just what I'm drawn to do. Like, I just like, when I'm in it, I'm lit up. I'm like, I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And I think sometimes there doesn't have to be much more than just like, this is just what I want to do. And I think it's okay for us to sometimes own that like, because this is just what I feel like doing. Because
Yeah.
if you really back up, like a lot of stuff like makes zero, there's no logical sense to like just about anything in existence. Like, you know, like art is, you know, the fundamental, but almost just anything else, anything created. But at some point we just go like, well, this is functional, but there's lots of ways things could function. Like we could all be using air balloons to fly around. Like somebody could make that happen. It's always funny watching like science fiction where they, you know, it's like, oh, it's air balloon based flight economy. So it's just however, whatever we want. And I think owning that I don't have to have a reason
I
other
agree too,
than
as well,
I
especially
want.
if you like want to, especially if you're talking about it and like brings you like so much passion and it brings you happiness and it's just very natural. So that could also like be a factor as well, like when you help other people. Yeah, absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I have
And
a
yeah,
Mhm.
go
I
ahead.
have a question. So you, as I heard you, you did this other kind of job, and how that started that you said, oh, I want to do actually something else. I mean, you said you got a PhD in engineering or microelectronics, something, and then how you discovered that that's not actually what you wanted to do. If you
Um,
can elaborate more on this.
Yeah, well, and there's still aspects of that I like really do enjoy, because it does like light up a part of my brain and use talents and things that allow me to see like the big picture and problem solve and things like that. So there's still aspects that I have that I enjoy. Yet there was like there's the big human connection, human impact piece that was kind of missing, and it was, you know, as going along doing tech work, you know, especially with a PhD, at some point, you know, you start to know things, and you know, there's other people that need to be brought up to speed, you know, new hires or interns. And I really discovered that like I really liked mentoring and coaching, you know, people that were new, things like that. And that was like sort of the beginning of like, oh, this really lights me up, and it's great. People seem to really benefit from, you know, how I interact with them, of, you know, with the perspective they get, the shift, and then the changes, things like that. And, you know, enough experiences of people going like, yeah, you know, when you said that, or yeah, our talk enabled me to do this. And now I can't believe that I'm doing this, or that this is now happening for me. And it's like, okay, yeah, I really like this. Apparently I have some aptitude for it. So let me do more of it in the company. And then at some point I'm like, let me start my own business so that can help people anywhere, not just people that work at the company that I've been working at, but it can help anybody in the world in any field. But I still, you know, more easily connect with people that are like, you know, in professional corporate environments. But it's one of those, sometimes we have connections with people that have completely different backgrounds as well, which is sort of like the fun part of meeting people and connecting with people, right?
but you studied also the stuff that you studied. You was in yoga. You studied this kind of maybe mindfulness and this other philosophy. So you was already involved in that. What helps you now for your coaching, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it was yeah, I was like, all in retrospect, I was, doing all of these other things that were sort of in preparation for this. Cause like, even before I got into yoga, I had gotten into meditation because I was in grad school. I ended up getting like really depressed, going on antidepressants. And I was like, I didn't want to get on antidepressants to start because I was like, well, what if this takes away the one thing that, makes me like good in school? And then I'm completely worthless. Which, was that like sort of the mind can get into thought patterns that are not helpful. And so we kind of have to get out of that. But I didn't want to be on antidepressants for the rest of my life because, they'll happily let you take any drug for forever here in the US and they'll pay for it and you'll pay for it. So I was like, I want to get into meditation. And so I ended up in like a sort of a Tibetan Buddhist inspired meditation group called like Shambhala. That like one of the most famous practitioners is this Pema Chodron. She's got like a lot of books, like one of her books like The Wisdom of No Escape and things like that. But so that was like where I got into meditation and mindfulness initially, and sitting with myself and learning to work with my thoughts. And but again, like that has had a very Eastern cultural influence, which makes it, it's like in retrospect, I'm like, oh, that's why that was so challenging. Cause there's like, most Eastern traditions, most people have like a love for themselves. Whereas usually here in the West, we start with like a hatred of ourselves. Like, I'm not good enough. I suck. And so then when we try to like meditate, it just gives us time and another thing to lament of like, oh, I'm so bad at this meditation. I keep having thoughts. I'm a failure. I suck at this. When really that's the mind thinking is just the mind doing what it's supposed to do. Like we don't get upset at the heart when it beats or the lungs when they breathe for us. So like when the mind has a thought, that's what it's supposed to do. It's what we do with it is the key. It's like we're not supposed to follow every thought. We're supposed to go like, okay, that's cute. We're going to do this now. We're going to keep following our breath in this meditation practice. Or it's like, that's great. You think someone's a jerk. We're not going to follow that. We're going to like see that this person is a human and could have like some valuable information for us. And it's just that exercise, that going back and forth is that's like the work and the magic of working with the mind instead of the mind working us.
Yeah.
So that was then again something you used as an alternate treatment. Instead of taking the pills, you started meditation. So it's based again on a personal experience, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so this is like, ends up being something that I'm an experience, a pathway I'm able to like offer and show that's possible to people by example. And then, through coaching, through mentoring. And I don't know, drugs are interesting because there's really anything that can come that we take externally, we can also generate internally. Like we don't actually need to take anything, like including the psychedelic plant medicines. Like I've had experiences without taking anything that have outdone any ayahuasca or mushroom thing that I'd ever experienced. And so for me, I'm like,
And you know what you just said is so amazing, because I found that out 20 years ago,
yeah,
that all this external stuff, what they're doing, whatever, that you actually, if you're really able to create it by yourself. I mean, and the reason why I found that out was because I have all my life problem with sleeping. And then if you don't sleep, you fall sometimes in this kind of meditation, even you don't know about it's meditation because you're in this trance, right?
yeah,
And then I remember I had this discussion with some students and medical students that, if someone is in drugs, then you have to take them away to sleep, and then they find something similar. And then this is the way to get them away from the drugs. And they're doing it. I don't know, 10 years later. I mean, you can teach yourself. Uh, Not everyone can this, of course, to use without external stimulation to put yourself in a trance state or in a high state. That's what I believe. And I have done this with me.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's super helpful to have that external thing that lets you know that such a state, whatever it might be, is possible. Because again, like sometimes it's really hard to try to get out of where we are without knowing that there's another destination is possible. So sometimes, you know, good to have whatever that altered state is to go, you know, because I've heard that it's often like, when people do psychedelics, it's like they usually get that, oh, I feel I'm connected, I'm one with everyone, like I am you, you are me. And the thing is like the drug lets you visit that, but you don't get to stay there. But like when you actually start to cultivate like the lifestyle, the way of being, then you get to live there more and more. And it's sort of, at least to me, it's like, the concept of being an enlightened being, it's you're living in that state, not as, almost continuously. And I think for most of us, the higher the percentage we can do it, the higher quality our life is going to be, and the higher quality of life everybody's life is going to be. But if we just do it every time, if it's only through the drug, then it's only through the drug. But I think there can be benefit to sometimes using these things to getting oh, well, here's, it's like watching a movie, a travel movie. It's like you get a taste of like, oh, this is what it might be like to go to Madrid, but it's nothing like living in Madrid, right? Like, yeah. But it's like if you didn't have the movie or the I can't, or the one day, what is those like Kontiki cruises the Australians do, where they like literally spend like 3 hours in each location or something. It's like they got a taste. They barely got a taste, but maybe they'll come back, right? So,
but then now I have to challenge.
It's true.
Sorry, now I have to challenge you because I think you can fool yourself to say, I mean, and that will be also the future in technology. There's another science fiction movie where they're actually putting people a mask on, and then they see this 3D, and they let them experience that you're actually in Madrid, but you're sitting only on a chair connected to a computer. So this is happening, and I think the human brain at one point don't see the difference anymore.
I mean, that's a whole interesting topic. This, of
yeah,
a fully immersed. Well, it's like speaking to like the Matrix becoming a reality, right?
Yes, exactly. And there's another movies who actually showcase of that. And there was a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, because we had him before, where he went to I think to this kind where they actually told him he's traveling to Mars, but he was still on Earth, right?
Oh, it's Total Recall. I don't know if I actually ever saw that. But yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think they Nicole, it's good meeting you.
I have to go. I have a meeting for work. Bye, guys. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it.
Bye. Yeah.